All right, everybody, I have 11:30 a.m. Time for the webinar to start. So we'll get started. Thanks everybody for attending the May Utah Water Supply Briefing. I'm Patrick Cormus, a hydrologist here at the Colorado River Basin Forecast Center, and I'll be presenting forecasts from Trevor, Brenda, and myself that cover Utah. As always, you can type questions into the question box, raise your hand, or just unmute yourself and ask a question. We've got a small enough group that we can probably do that, and I'll stop periodically to make sure everybody's following or has their questions answered. So it'll be a pretty quick briefing today. We'll go over weather and snowpack, jump right into the water supply forecasts, spend a little bit of time on upcoming weather and uncertainties in that weather, and then end with some contacts and questions. So getting right into it, April precipitation was pretty varied across Utah. So in the north, it was above normal with the Bear at like 113%. And then as you moved south, percent of normal precipitation for April declined to the point where you get to the Virgin, it was only 33% of normal. The good news, as we all know, is water year precipitation is still well above normal. So that center plot there has a blue dotted line where normal water year precipitation would be at this point. You can see all the bars well above that. On the right is just a table of tabulated form of the center table there, showing you April or October through the end of April precipitation and percent of normal. Here's what that looks like spatially. So on the left is April precipitation and percent of average. Here you can see the northern parts of the Bear doing the best with a little part of the Smith's Fork and places near there over 130% of normal. Much of the high elevation and the significant contributing area of the Bear is above 110%, and then that generally falls off as you go south. The Duchesne as a whole is below normal, but if you look way over at Red Fleet, they did pretty good, but as you move west, it gets kind of worse and worse. Temperatures, taking a look at maximum temperatures for April, you can see that it was generally cool or much below normal temperatures for April, which is, you know, good news and bad news. We held on to a lot of snow. There's still a lot of snow that needs to come down, but that helped preserving a lot of the upper elevation snowpacks. So brings us to that kind of final point over there. High elevation snowpack has largely been preserved, while the mid elevation snowpack and low elevation snowpack have really started to contribute to stream flow across the state. Okay, so the big kind of weather feature recently has been this big ridge that set over our area, and that kind of set in and started creating really warm temperatures about April 27th and ended about May 5th. So about today, we'll start seeing a cool down in the area. But what we're looking at here is a map of the mean daily temperature anomaly from the beginning of May to May 3rd is the last time it was updated. So this is from Prism, and you can see all of Utah being above normal, and some of Utah being up to 13 degrees Fahrenheit above the normal temperatures. All right, when it comes to snowpack, what we're looking at here on the left is a bunch of SNOTEL stations with long records and what percent of median they are as of May 4th. So what you're seeing over on the left map is a bunch of purples and really dark blues. So the snowpack is really still above normal for this time of year. In the center there, the snow conditions in our model. So you can see they match up very well with the measured points from SNOTEL sites. So there's still a lot of snow in the area that's going to contribute to stream flow. The disclaimer is, this time of year, especially when you get to southern Utah, a lot of those median values are very, very low. So when you start making fractions with really, really low numbers in the denominator, you get really high percents of average. But regardless of that, there's still a lot of high elevation snow left across Utah. So on the right here is a table of model snowpack and percent of average. And you can see that lots and lots of forecast groups are above 200% of normal. And then the Virgin, you can see this kind of, there's still a lot of snow there, but it's kind of artificially inflated because normally a lot of the sites have very, very little snow there at this point in the year. Okay, we'll get into the Utah water supplies now. You can see on the left there, we've been reworking our website pretty aggressively for the past couple of months, but this year we can look at water supply points as a percentile, and on the bottom you can see kind of the legend for that, going from the lowest on record to the highest on record, being the black triangles. So if you squint your eyes, you can tell the difference between really dark blue and black. So we have forecast record high April through July volumes at 3 places right now: Little Bear, Paradise, Big Cottonwood Creek, and the Six Creeks, and Salt Nephi down in Provo, Utah Lake area. So just kind of a different way to look at the spatial distribution of water supply forecasts. Here's the map we usually show here, but it's hard to pick out differences since they're all really dark purples and dark blues. So I guess the message is clear though. We have high water supply forecasts across the state. I'll be presenting the May 1st forecasts of April through July volumes. So these will include April observations. And as always, this is the 1991 to 2020 average that we're presenting the percent of averages based on. So we'll step through these different forecast groups. You can see the Bear at 180% of normal median forecast, Weber 220, so on and so on. So you can pick out your favorite forecast group here and get an idea of where we're sitting with percent of average. Okay, in the Bear forecasts, our median forecast, like I just said, is 180% of average, and forecasts range between 124 and over 200% of average. Here's a quick bar chart of kind of the month-to-month median forecast for the Bear. So you can see in January we started out at 110%, and May 1st we're up to 180% of normal. Here's a quick evolution plot that we like to show, and we'll just kind of look at a couple of typical things that have happened. Right after we put out our April 1st water supply forecast, we had a large precipitation event that covered a large portion of Utah. So you can see our model guidance right after this April 1st forecast shot up. And then we have kind of a steady decline where we saw near normal precipitation. A couple of other things to show. This is the Little Bear at Paradise site that we're looking at. So you can see the maximum value is this dotted green line at the top here. That was a 2011 volume. And you can see that our 50% forecast is over that. So we'll likely be looking at record volumes at Little Bear Paradise. The other thing is since we're in that April through July window, you can see that the observations are kind of stepping up day by day. This will be updated every day with new volumes here. And you can see as of yesterday, we hit the median April through July volume yesterday. So the dotted green line under the orange line is median of April through July volume. This solid green line, the dark one, is average water supply volume there. So runoffs kind of really started to take off, and we'll watch that climb here in the next coming days. All right, into the Weber, where our median forecast is 220% of average, and forecasts range between 137% of average to over 200% of average. You can see up in the Ogden and Pine View areas where 230 and 260% of normal. Coming out of the Uinta is about 140% of normal. And then when we get down to Echo, just about 200% of normal. Weber Gateway at 250% of normal. So a lot of water moving around in the Weber Basin right now. And once again, that bar chart showing how our forecasts have changed over time, starting around 125% of average, and then after some really high precipitation in the area, it jumped up to around 220% right now. Okay, looking at another evolution plot, this one for the Pineview Reservoir on the Ogden. Once again, we see that dramatic increase right after the early April precipitation event, and then a steady decrease to its current value of about 285,000 acre feet as our most probable forecast. You can see the wetter scenarios in the uncertainty here are above the maximum volume recorded once again in 2011 of 300,000 acre feet. And once again, our current stream flow observations have surpassed the normal or median April through July volume, and that'll continue to rise steeply here during runoff. Okay, in the Six Creeks, our May 1st median forecast for this group is 230% of average, where forecasts range between 182% and well over 200% of average, with the Lambs and Dell Creek area kind of being the highest percent of average of the Six Creeks area. Little Cottonwood at 182% of average, to City Creek 190% of average. And that bar chart once again showing a very similar pattern of our forecasts over time, how they've increased to today. Okay, we'll look at Big Cottonwood water supply forecast through the evolution plot here. You can see that the maximum volume also in 2011, we've got a lot of our probability forecasts above maximum volume here. You'll notice that the observations are coming in a little bit below normal. This dotted brown line here is the normal accumulation to the average April through July volume. So we're lagging a little bit behind on the snow here, but worry not. A lot of that snow in the upper elevations really hasn't started to come off much yet. So here we'll look at a little bit of a messy plot showing the model SWE and some SNOWTEL SWE sites here. So, this is a plot of snow water equivalent in inches over time. Green is the low elevation zone in our model, red is the middle elevation, and blue is the high elevation snowpack in our model. And you can see that just recently in the past day or so, we've started melting high elevation and mid elevation snow in the model. Mill D, SNOWTEL site's about 9,000 feet, so that's up here in this gray bar here, or gray line, and you can see that kind of agrees pretty well with kind of how the model's been behaving. And this bunch of dotted lines down here are median values at both the SNOWTEL sites and the model SWE. So you can see that we're way above median values at all SNOWTELs and all model zones in the model. Okay, moving on to the Provo, Utah Lake Basin. May 1st median forecast is 245% of average, and forecasts range between 170 and over 200% of average. You can see Salt Creek down here really high at 470% of average. That average is taken from 1994 to 220, so we're losing a little bit of the early 90s there in that average, but very high nonetheless. You can see the Provo headwaters coming in at 170, 175% of normal. And then as we move down in elevation to Deer Creek, we jump up to 226% of average due to a lot of local inflow coming from that segment. Utah Lake at 340% of average. And the very similar bar chart showing, you know, starting off in January above normal and then climbing from there. Okay, into the Duchesne, Price, and San Rafael. In the Duchesne, we've had kind of very little change from April 1st up to 10% decreases here. The median forecast in the Duchesne for May 1st is 160% of average, and the forecasts range between 130 and 240% of average. In the Price and San Rafael, we were looking at 5 to 15% decreases from our April 1st forecast. Median forecast is still 205% of average, with forecasts ranging between 130 and 270% of average. And once again, we have this bar chart showing that, you know, a little bit more stable forecasts, but still kind of big jumps from March to April and then slight decline to May. Okay, here's a closer look at the Duchesne, Price, and San Rafael model SWE, kind of all aggregated together based on what we consider the significant contributing areas or areas that contribute most to runoff. So here we're showing a few different years, the median down here in blue and a few high years to compare to 2023 is in the black line. 2011 is going to be this orange line and green is 1997. So the model snow peaks kind of at the same place as 2011 did. 1997 kind of had similar peak timing but lower magnitude. And then a closer look at 2011 as an analog year. The maximum snow was about a month later due to continued cold and late snow. And in 2011, some of the forecast points had record runoff volumes. This year forecast runoff volumes are not expected to be as high as 2011, but will likely be higher than 1997. So if you like analog years in this area, that should give you kind of a bound between 2011 and 1997. Okay, and we'll wrap up with the Sevier and the Virgin. Our May 1st forecasts in the Sevier are about 225% of average. Once again, these are regulated forecasts, so we do our best to account for regulation and diversions being taken out of the stream. The forecasts range between 136 and over 200% of normal. And then when we get down to the Virgin, you know, we only have 2 points here, the Santa Clara and Virgin at Virgin, but median forecasts about 320% of average. And these are unregulated forecasts. All right, so what kind of skill can you expect from these forecasts? So in May 1st, we're getting better and better in forecasts with regard to mean absolute error. So you can see I picked out just a few points here. We'll point out that error tends to decrease each month into the spring. Since it's May, our future weather uncertainty is kind of a decreasing portion in the May 1st water supply, and that'll go down in the future as more observations come in and there's less weather variability in the future. We do better in headwaters that are snow-dominated basins or places where we really have a good handle on diversions and demands. And we do a little bit worse at lower elevations that are more rain-dominated or have early melt, and we're downstream of diversions and irrigation, and we don't have as good a handle on those diversions. But anyway, so if you're up at Barrett, Utah, Wyoming state line, we're down to about 13% error as an average. But then if you go down to Woodruff Narrows, we're back up to 27% average. And so on and so forth. You know, headwaters, we do really well at Oakley, where our average error is, you know, almost 10%. This is all available on our website, so you can look at, you know, how we did year to year, and then this is just kind of a historical average over the calibration period. So lots of information on the website there. All right, as a reminder, we also have peak flow products. We've been working really hard to kind of revamp the data that's available to us. So right here, we're looking at the National Weather Service flood stage exceedant probability view. I just wanted to point out that up in the Bear along the main stem, mostly in Pocatello's area, we've got 2 points that are kind of flooding here. So Barrett border is just over Action, and we'll probably go over minor flood stage pretty soon. And then Little Barrett Paradise has been kind of going over flood stage and coming back down day to day with diurnal fluctuations. But there's lots of different ways to visualize where peaks are or have happened and are forecast to happen. And a lot of these points, information gets updated daily with our daily run. So if you have feedback on any of our peak forecast points, we'd love to hear from you. Okay, before we talk about future weather, I figured I'd stop and see if anybody had any questions. Feel free to type or unmute or ask any questions that you have. We have 13 attendees. Looks good.
I don't see any questions in the question box.
Great, great. Okay. All right, well, we'll go on to some upcoming weather here, outlook. So we've got a low pressure system that's going to cross the area kind of from southwest to northeast. So it's kind of an interesting direction for systems to move. And that'll be happening over the next few days, bringing a sharp transition from kind of above normal temperatures to below normal temperatures. And this will result in periods of precipitation across the area, at least the northern part of Utah, down to southwest Utah. So the cool wet pattern will remain in place through early next week. Our 7-day precipitation totals are, 3/4 of an inch to over an inch, usually coming in small amounts at a time over a long period of times. But there was some convection over the area yesterday, bringing high localized amounts. And then the lower and mid elevations might see 1/4 to 3/4 of an inch over the next 7 days. Weather models diverge next week in regard to the overall weather pattern. Most likely scenario right now is that the cool, unsettled weather will continue into next week. However, there's about a 30% chance that high pressure will develop next week and lead to above normal temperatures. When we ran the model today, days 6 and 7 had significant precipitation in there, but that precipitation is highly uncertain at this point. So know that we'll be keeping a close eye on weather forecasts, and forecasts that far out will likely change within the next couple of days. So keep that in mind if you're flipping through our hydrographs today. 8 to 14 day precipitation outlook. Of course, Utah spans 4 different probability categories. So we've got below normal chances of above normal precipitation in the northernmost parts of Utah and the Bear. And then as we go south, we have a higher probability of above average precipitation. And then when we get to temperature outlook, we have high probability of being above normal temperature from that 8 to 14 day outlook. So that's Provo sites, Woodland and Deer Creek. Yeah, let me answer that question right after. I'll go through the summary here. So just a quick summary. April precipitation was high in the north of Utah and low in the south of Utah. Water year precipitation is high, much above normal across Utah. April temperatures have been below normal across Utah, and that is really letting us hold on to some of our high elevation snowpack, especially in northern Utah. Current snowpack is much above normal across Utah, and following that, water supply forecasts are much above Utah. Volumetric forecasts for Provo, Woodland, and Deer Creek are, as always, available on our website, but it should only take me a couple of seconds to pull that up right now. As I'm doing that, just letting you know that this is our last regularly scheduled webinar. We can have more as needed, and this is how you can find us and the focal points for different areas. I'm just gonna quickly here pull up our website, go to water supply forecasts here, official map. We'll zoom in on Woodland here. Okay, so at Woodland, our most probable volumetric forecast is 163,000 acre feet. The wet scenario is about 185,000 acre feet, and a drier scenario is 139,000 acre feet. And as a reminder, you can always pull this up and look at model guidance day to day. So if we have below normal precipitation into the future, you can expect this blue line to trend downward and vice versa. And then if we look down at Deer Creek, here we go, DCR. Our most probable volumetric forecast is 270,000 acre feet for April through July volume. A wet scenario would be 330,000 acre feet, and a dry scenario would be 240,000 acre feet. And these are unregulated forecasts, so we're kind of taking out regulation upstream, which includes imports from the Duchesne and the Weber River Basin. So this would be kind of the naturally occurring volume forecast that you can imagine here after we take out Jordanelle regulation and basin imports. Thanks for the question. Okay, and be happy to answer any other questions that anybody might have. All right, as always, feel free to contact us with any questions or concerns. It's been great working with so many people this year. It's kind of fun having a huge year. People come out of the woodwork and you get to work with them and answer questions. And just want you to know that we really appreciate, feedback and back and forth, and letting you guys know strengths and weaknesses of the forecast and things like that. So on that note, please get a hold of us with any more questions or concerns, and we'll be in touch. Thanks.